Hello and welcome to episode 5 of We Work Together, a podcast all about working in partnership to improve the health and care of people in West Yorkshire and Harrogate, and the relationships between the organisations and people involved. In this episode, Christine Hughes, one of the partnership's communications officers, talks to Dr Matt Walsh, Calderdale CCG's Chief Officer and the Senior Responsible Officer for the partnership's Improving Plant Care programme. They talk about how the arts and creativity are linked to health and well-being, and Matt explains why, for him, the final scene from Billy Elliot sums up that relationship perfectly. Thanks for listening.
Hello Matt, thanks for joining me on this podcast this morning.
Hi Christine, it's good to talk to you.
Great. Now, this isn't really good for a podcast that's audio only, but you've handed me a picture of a male ballet dancer, and he's just done a huge leap into the air. He's striking a wonderful pose. If I knew ballet terms, I'd be able to tell you exactly what that pose was, but whatever, it does look really good. And he's wearing some pantaloons that are covered in white swan feathers, so I'm guessing this is an image from Swan Lake, the ballet. Do you want to tell me about it and what significance is this picture?
Okay, thank you, Christine. This is difficult on a podcast, but this picture is a picture taken from the film Billy Elliot.
Right.
And you're right. It's a picture of the ballet Swan Lake, and it's Matthew Bourne's production of Swan Lake, where the swans are played by men. And so the picture that we have in front of us is this beautiful image of a man dressed in feathered pantaloons, leaping into the action from the wings of the stage. All you can see is the shape of this man leaping into the stage, lit with spotlights, and he's leaping into the dark. And I've chosen this picture because it speaks to me. I'm doing some work with colleagues in Calderdale about the relationship between arts, creativity, and health and well-being.
Okay.
And this picture sums up for me the power of that connection. So I want to tell you just a couple of stories about this picture and what it means to me, and then we could go on then to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing in Calderdale on arts and health. So Billy Elliot, a young boy who grew up in a mining community in the northeast of England, a film set in the early 1980s, and the film speaks to me, has always spoken to me about opportunity.
Yeah.
The story of Billy Elliot, a young boy for whom the expectation was that he would grow up to be like his dad, a miner and a boxer. And the first part of the film is focused on that and life in that community at the time. And life was hard at that time. It was socio-economically challenged, that part of the world, and politically the world was in turmoil, and there was real tension, which is reflected in the film. It's filmed or set in the time of the miners' strike.
Right.
So there's a huge amount of tension operating around the story, and tension in the story of Billy and Billy's experience. So the realisation that he wanted to dance, and the impact that then had on relationships around him, his relationship with his dad, his relationship with his friends and the community. It speaks to me. It reminds me, this story reminds me of two things really. First of all, talent, and where do we look for talent, and this film reminds me that there is talent everywhere.
Yeah.
And our job as places is to create opportunity for talent to thrive and for people to live a life where they can maximise their talents and live a larger life. So this film speaks to me about talent. It also speaks to me about inequality.
Yeah.
So part of the story running through this is about gender stereotypes and the beautiful power of the image.
Yeah.
Is a reminder that there's beauty in all of us, and gender stereotyping does not help because it limits us, it limits our potential, it limits the possibility.
Yeah,
And,
I mean that picture is so strong, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so strong, but and beautiful at the same time, with the sort of the feathers and the strength and everything. It's amazing.
It's beautiful, powerful, elegant, poised. It's really beautiful. But the other thing. So this work on the relationship between arts and health. Then, what's that all about? So we know that if we invest in creativity, culture, and if we connect the worlds of health and care to the world of creativity, we know the evidence is there that generates a return. It generates a return not just in terms of people's lives, but it generates a return in terms of money. It generates a financial return. So the all-party parliamentary group that reported on this agenda 3 years ago now captured the evidence that helps us to understand that this is something worth investing in. It's worth supporting a conversation about. So arts on prescription has demonstrated a 37% drop in GP consultations for people who are active in arts, and a 27% reduction in hospital admissions, a saving of £216
That's
per
massive,
patient
isn't
a
it?
year. A social return on investment of between £4 and £11 has been calculated for every pound invested in arts on prescription. And there's a real challenge. There's a real challenge to the NHS here, because whilst the evidence is there, we don't buy things in the same way. We buy activity. And the challenge to us in the health and care sector is we need to find a different way of buying the relationship that we want to create between people and creativity. We know that it will benefit them. They know that it will benefit them. We need to find different ways of investing in that. And so part of the work we're doing in Calderdale is to partner with Nesta, an independent organisation that's going to help us to create a new currency, a new way of demonstrating value, so that the statutory sector can be persuaded to invest in something that we know will help people. So the other thing about this picture then, one of the most powerful things about this picture for me is the realisation that this man has been waiting in the wings and he's leapt onto the stage in this beautiful, powerful way. But the ballet is already playing.
Right.
And everybody else on the stage knows what they are doing. Now, I'm not saying I'm Billy Elliot, okay?
Right. You are wearing the feathered, let's just point out, you are wearing the feathered pantaloons as we speak, but I'd like to mention.
I wish I was. I wish I could create an image as beautiful as the one that I have in my mind. And if I'm being honest, this image reminds me that there have been times in my life when I feel like I have approached that feeling of joy that picture represents. So there have been moments in my life when I felt like I was in command of what was happening to me. That's another way that this picture speaks to me, speaks to my heart. But let me get back to this man is joining something that's already happening. And the way that this man joins is really important. So if he bundles onto the stage like he doesn't know what he's doing, then he spoils everything.
Right.
And the reason I'm mindful of that is I know in Calderdale, and I know across the whole of West Yorkshire and Harrogate, there is a world of creativity, and that play is already playing. And here we are as the NHS, and here I am as an NHS leader saying we want to play.
Right.
How we go into that conversation is really important. And I have learned that in the work that we've been doing in Calderdale for the last couple of years. It's taken a long time to get to this conversation, because we have to be so careful. The NHS has a tendency, if I'm being honest, of wanting to assume control.
Right, so we'd want to go on the lead part, whereas we might have to be in the background a little bit.
Christine, you've just summed it up beautifully. Actually, the actors are out there. Our job might not even to be on the stage. Our job's around the edges of this. Our job is to facilitate. Our job is to connect people. Our job is to find ways of investing. Our job is to tell that community that is creative, we value you.
Right.
We are curious about how we can create a better relationship, but we must not assume control. We must not pretend that we know, because we don't. The expertise for this sits in a different part of our system. And what I know from the conversations that I've been having with colleagues in Calderdale is that that sector, those people who are in that creative space are aching for us to make a connection.
Right.
They're all ears. They want to help. Our job is to say we want to be part of that conversation. We want to create a connection, and we are willing to consider investing in that.
Yeah. So I have a little story similar to that. My mother-in-law is quite poorly often and spends a lot of time going to the GPs, generally just feeling unwell. And one time she went, the GP just recommended that she went to a local church knit and natter group. Yeah. And absolutely loved it. And it was more about her being upset because she was lonely and didn't have anybody to talk to, and generally felt a little bit under the weather. And it's something like that, just, you know, no pills or medication, but it was the GP that told her about that. So is that the sort of thing we're talking about? Is this social prescribing then? Is this, we're going to get GPs almost doing a prescription for knit and natter group? Or
so you're so right. The moment that we find ourselves at now, particularly with the changes to the GP contract, the capacity building around social prescribing, the new awareness that there is in general practice and within our localities about the value of connecting people to themselves and each other more effectively through work like the work that we're doing on arts and health is absolutely the point. So we are at a moment now where there's a real opportunity to make those connections, and part of the work that we're doing in Calderdale is to begin to experiment a bit about how this might be in one or two of our localities, and the resource that we've identified within Calderdale to support this, part of that resource has come from one of our localities. So I am really curious about how we use this new awareness that there is about the role of social prescribing to facilitate this movement. There's a note of caution in the middle of all of that for me too. Ideas of prescribing this,
Right.
I think we need to be careful about. What I don't want, and this might just be me, and I'm curious about the views of others, but I don't want to create another way in which people are dependent on the NHS for the opportunity to connect to things that we know will enrich their lives. So I'm just a little bit hesitant about the use of the word prescribing in this space. But you're right that the opportunity to involve health and care teams in conversations with the creative community through the link workers that we're putting in place for our primary care networks, there is a real opportunity there.
Right. Yeah, because I think prescribing as well, it's quite good that you actually think that it's going to do your health good, isn't it? Because sometimes, because I quite like doing things like cross-stitching and colouring in books and things like that, but I always feel guilty doing it, because it's like, somebody say, what you colouring in, or what it's like as if you shouldn't be doing it. It's like it feels sometimes self-indulgent, but when you do know that it is so good for your health, your physical and your mental health, we need to get that across a bit more, don't we, as well, that it's, you're not being self-indulgent and selfish if you sat colouring in a book all afternoon on a Sunday, or you go for a walk when there's a pile of washing up to be done, and you need that physical and that mental break from it all, and it's not selfish.
So there's a link to everything here. I'm thinking about the conversations we're having in Calderdale about Calderdale Cares. What are the components of Calderdale Cares? This is not just about the health and care system or health and care services relating to people differently. It is about that, and that's a very important dimension to this. But it's also about how we connect people to things that help them to be well, help them to be happy, help them to live a richer and more fulfilled life. So the work that we're doing on arts and health is part of that. The work that we're doing on food for life is part of that. The work and thinking that we're doing about the South Pennine Park, how we use our landscape and how we use our landscape to help our health and well-being and our sense of connection to our place. Really important. The work that we're doing in Calderdale around inclusive economy and how we get people from our poorer communities engaged in employment. There's a relationship to that as well. All of these things are interconnected. They're all part of an approach that a place is taking to connect people to themselves and each other more positively, because we have a profound view that the answer to the challenge that we're facing we have within us, we have between us. The answer is about relationship, the answer is about connection, the answer is about how we create the opportunities to connect people more effectively.
Right, a challenge.
Yes, it's a challenge, but then everything that we're doing is difficult. The beautiful thing about this is that it's about our humanity. And these conversations remind us all that at the end of the day we're actually here to make lives better.
Yeah. So are we like the dance teacher in Billy Elliot then, the one that actually saw that potential?
I don't know if we're the dance teacher, because I think the dance teachers are out there. I think we're the lighting technicians. I think we're the stage hands. I think we're the audience who is willing the performance on. We're the orchestra creating the music that people can dance to.
Right. That's a really lovely point to end this podcast on, I think. So Billy Elliot, he struggled, he persevered, and he got through, and it was a wonderful ending, wasn't it?
Beautiful.
So, thank you. And you can pirouette out of the room.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, Matt.